Oh, I'm on. Sorry. Hello. Welcome back to the class. I'm a little bit slow where technology is concerned. Really slow. So I do apologize. We'll go back to the lesson. So let me get rid of this screen here. I'd like to say hi to everybody. Feel free to message on the chat. Unfortunately, I'm not able to see the chat as often as I would like. So it's not really as interactive as I would like it to be. But, we'll get there eventually with a little bit of practice. I'm going to go back to my notes now. If you come online and you say hi, just imagine I said hi back to you. So I've got a little thing down here. And we'll bring that to the top. And we'll bring those back down to the bottom. Okay, so to basically recap on what we've done so far, we've seen that there are two types of verb. We have action verbs, like walk, talk, run. And we also have state verbs. We'll come back to state verbs a little bit later. Actions, verbs which actually describe feelings, such as love, or hate, or prefer, or own. We've seen that tenses tell us how the action happens. And we've seen that there are two ways in which an action can happen. It can be a simple action, or it can be a continuous action. And that's where we need to start. When choosing a tense, it's all about the action. Tenses, the way in which we make sentences, as I said before, we do not choose the tense. I use present simple, not because it's present simple, but because it's necessary, because it gives me information about the action. I use past simple, because I have to use past simple. I don't get to choose not to use past simple because I think it's boring. I simply have to use past simple because it explains an action in a particular way, which we observe from the action itself, that action happening outside of us. We observe actions. It's our tenses are used to describe the ways we see actions and the way actions are related with each other. So it's very important that we actually start from there. And as I said earlier, for some new viewers, I'm going to go back to the top. This section here is basically where the action or state happens. And as we saw before the break time, and as we stated a short time ago, we have two ways: simple, continuous, simple, continuous, simple, continuous, simple, continuous. We only have simple and we only have continuous. So let's go back to the bottom, where we need to choose a tense. And tenses also tell us how to change the verb form accordingly, or appropriately, or necessary. They all have the same meaning. It tells us what structure we need to use. It tells us how we need to change the verb. We'll come back to that shortly. There's an easy way and there's a hard way. Hopefully, we'll be looking at the easier way to remember all of these structures. So that was that. And I'm going to go back down here. And we're going to begin by looking actually. We could have that there. And we'll just move these all the way down there. Continue down there a little bit on the second page because I'm going to need some room. I'm going to quickly open up my notes. Okay, so with simple actions, with simple tenses, and let's get rid of that, make it a little bit nicer for you. And we'll discuss some of those points very shortly. I'll get rid of that horrible lines there. So with simple tenses, we're discussing the action itself. The duration of that action is not important. Actually, in simple tenses, the action has no time. It's zero of duration. Sorry, it's lacking duration, as it were. And let's go down here and turn this off. So I'm going to quickly, to illustrate this, we'll go back to the classic timeline. So we have time here, and we're going to divide this line, this timeline, whoops, biraz yamuk oldu ama we're going to divide this timeline, biraz kafam yamuk. And we're going to divide this timeline into 3 parts. Of course, we need a text box here, and I'm going to quickly copy that, or I was going to try and copy that. So I don't know, here we could have, we'll call this the past. I've just put another type, so I won't waste time. I'm not going to make it look really pretty for you. And here we have, of course, the present. And here, over here, whoops, I can do this. There we go. And over here, we have the future. Of course, that's not what time really looks like. But when we talk about time, that's the way most Western cultures actually think of it. We think of it as being past, present, and future. Not all languages are the same, in fact. Some languages don't even have a past. Some cultures don't even have a memory of the past, if you can believe that. They have no yesterday. They only think about the now. They don't even think about tomorrow. If you look at Western languages, such as English and German, we focus more on the present, what we need to do now, how we can use that time now in order to get a future result, as it were. I find in Turkish, for example, you're more future focused as opposed to present focused. And I see this in students who are preparing for the TOEFL exam. Instead of studying now for the TOEFL exam, they study tomorrow for the TOEFL exam when it's a little bit too late. So we're going to need some actions here as well. Let's get an arrow, because I like arrows. So there we go, that's our first action. And I'm going to put another one over here, hopefully. Whoa, there, look at me go. And there we go. I'm a genius. And I'm going to get rid of this one, because I'm not that much of a genius. We'll talk about why this doesn't happen in the past. So we need a little bit of space. So simple tenses. To talk about 2 things, actually. I'll think I've changed my mind about that. We'll go down here. So simple tenses are used to talk about 2 things. And the first thing a simple tense tells us is that this action is a single action. We have one action, one single action. We don't have 3, we don't have 4, we just have a single action. And as I mentioned above, we're not interested in the duration. We're not interested in the duration of that word. We are simply interested in the action itself. And as you can see down here, we have no duration. It's almost like it's a point in time. Present simple, well, it's a little bit different. We'll come back to that shortly. And here we have that single action again, but instead of being in the past, it's actually in the future. But when we look at the actions, if I bring the action back over here, the actions are in fact exactly the same. We're talking about the same action, but we're talking about it in two different time frames. So if I quickly give you an example of this, single action here, I think I've got in my little depot. Here we go. I've got something ready for us, so we don't waste too much time. And I'm going to put that just there. Nope, I'm not going to put that there, not yet. I forgot something. I probably forgot to copy this in. Copy. Yapışacağım da. Az kaldı. Whoops, there we have it. Okay, and we've got that up here somewhere. I think I can just get rid of that one. So of course, with single actions, we can't use it in the present. So I'll just put no single actions in present. It's possible, but we'll discuss that. No single actions in present. We'll discuss that very shortly. We won't discuss that now. I'll put that there for a very, very small note, and we'll come back to that in a little while. So let's have a look at some past simple examples. So he spoke to me yesterday. He spoke to me one time. We're not interested in the duration. We're just saying this action happened. And of course, we know this action happened in the past because we're simply using the past form of the verb. Now we can say the same action, but we can put that action into the future. He will speak to me later. Again, this action has no duration. We're talking about the verb itself without duration, and here is will speak. The only difference between this and this isn't the action up here or the way the action happens. It's the verb form, because tenses, we need to change the verb form too. In the past, we use the past simple form, and in the future, we use, as we discussed before, and it's the same in Turkish, or jacacaksın. We use will, and of course, we use the base form of the verb to be. Let's look at another example. So here, we don't want to do that. There we go. Okay, well, it's going to stay like that because I can't change it. I want to change it though. I do apologize. Okay, that's bucket everything up, and we'll just put that back to black. There we go. Wow. Okay, I'm getting there, boys and girls. I'm getting there. I need some water. So I rode to France last year, and again we have that action, to ride. And we know that it's a single action. We know that it's a single action because we're using the past simple. We're going, hey, I rode to France last year. The duration of this action isn't important, so we're using simple. And we know that this action is in the past, so we need to use past simple. We can have the same over here. I will ride to France next year, and I'm going to highlight that as well. We'll do that in red. I will ride to France tomorrow. Again, we have that same action. If we go back up here, we've got I rode to France last year, no duration. This action happened, it's completed. And over here in the future, we've got exactly the same action, to ride. It's a single action. There's no need for duration. So we simply, I will ride to France next year. The only difference between these two, it's not the action itself, but it's the way we have formed the tense. Of course, again, with future simple, we use will and the base form. And with past simple, we just simply use the past form. I think in Turkish, ikinci hali gibi bir şey, which I absolutely hate, but that's okay. Then we have another example. I read a book yesterday, and we can compare that with this example. I read a book yesterday. I will read a book. I will read a book tomorrow. Of course, again, read here in both of them. It's a single action. We're not talking about the duration. We're talking about that single action in time. Again, the only difference we have between the two is actually the verb form. Of course, when we talk about single actions in the future, we use will and the base form again. And when we talk about single actions in the past, we need past simple, because simple, what does simple mean? Simple means single action. O kadar basit işte. Simple doesn't mean basic. I get a lot of students, I don't like using present simple because it's so basic. We've done it all the time. But like I said in the first half of the lesson, we don't choose tenses. We observe actions and we use the tense accordingly. If we go down here for another example, we'll turn that one black. No. They flew to London. Again, we have that verb to fly. And here, we also have they will fly to London. Again, we have the action fly. Here in the past, we're using the past simple form. But still, it's a single action. How do we know it's a single action? Because it's simple. When we want to talk about actions, and only the action, we choose simple tenses. Here, I've used past simple because it's in the past. And here, I've used future simple because it's in the future. How do we know it's in the future? Well, again, we have this modal verb will. We'll go through one more example together and we'll do it like that to save some time. Yeah, that's the way we'll do it. I had breakfast at 8. We have this verb have, to have breakfast. We call these collocations. To have an argument, to have an idea, to have homework. We use a verb and we use the noun form. Here again, there's no difference between this action and this action. They are both single actions. We're not talking about the duration of that action. Again, with past simple, I shall repeat because repetition is good. It's not a bad thing. Here we're using the past form of the verb. We're saying, hey, this is a single action because it's simple, but this single action happened in the past. Therefore, we need to use this had. And I think I might actually do that for that. Save some time. And here, of course, again, we have that single action have. But here, we've got that single action simple, means single. Here we know we need to use the future. So we have future simple. And I'm just going to quickly highlight the other ones for you so we don't waste any time. We still have a long way to go. Here we have the verb watched. Again, it's a single action. And here we're using it in the future. Again, we have a single action. We have a simple single action. Simple single action. The only difference is we know this single action happened in the future. This single action here happened in the past. How do we know it happened in the past? We have the regular suffix past there, which indicates that this was a past single action. Again, we have do and we have did, respectively, and did is an irregular verb, and the past of do is did. Of course, with will, we don't have that problem because we're using the base form, the same structure that we would use in present simple tenses. There's only one real difference. After will, the verb for he, she in it, it does not take the S suffix. So in present simple, we say he works, but in the future simple, we would say he will work. And we have some other examples there too. I think we've run through enough of them. So let's go down to the next point. Oh, okay. So I'm going to come back here, actually. Why not? Why can't we actually... Şekiller. We don't have everything. So you can imagine a question mark here. Why is it not possible to talk about single actions in the present simple? Well, there's a reason for that. Simply, we don't use the present simple to talk about single actions. It's as simple as that. It's possible to talk about single actions in the past. It's possible to talk about single actions in the future. But it's not possible to talk about single actions in the present. We can use present simple. We can use present simple for single actions. Actually, we can sometimes, but with the use of a conjunction. And for students who don't know what a conjunction is, a conjunction, I think the Turkish is bağlaç, We can use it with a conjunction, but this often has a future meaning. It often has a future meaning. It doesn't have a present meaning. I'll give you some examples so you've got something to work from a little bit later. Of course, once you've watched this once, please feel free to watch it again and again. You can use it as a revision guide. There's a lot of information to take in here. Of course, you're not going to understand everything, but you can watch it again. Great thing about YouTube, great thing about Just English. You can watch it again later, as well as live, Even if you think one of your friends are going to gain from this video, feel free to actually share the video. That'd be cool too. What was I going to do here? We were going to actually make it smaller. So we'll go down to 16 for that. So I'll give you some examples of those. The conjunction before is often used with the present simple. Again, it has a future meaning. So before I finish this today, before I meet you tonight, I will meet up with Fatih. So we have this conjunction before here, and I'll highlight that. And here you can see, before I meet you tonight, we actually have the present simple there. But when we use these together, this action, it's no longer a present action. It's just a different way we can talk about a future action. Of course, this is a very different subject to what we're doing today, but I want to give you some examples so you can get as much out of it as possible. The conjunction after works in exactly the same way. After I meet up with you, comma, I will go home and have dinner. I don't know, very basic sentence. Well, it's not a basic sentence. It's actually a complex sentence. Easy to understand, but grammatically, this is what we call a complex sentence. If you look here, we have this conjunction, and we have two clauses. Clause in Turkish, cümlecik. We've got this first clause here, I meet up with you. We have one subject, we have one action, and here we have another subject, and we have another action. And in English, if you're studying for the TOEFL exam or the IELTS exam, even academic English, it really doesn't matter. This is what we mean by complex language. Complex language bu işte. Complex language isn't a long sentence that you can't understand. That's not what we mean grammatically by complex. We mean complex in terms of grammatical structure. So if we just have a sentence such as, I am Joseph, that's what we call a simple sentence. We have one subject, one verb, I am, and then we have the complement, Joseph. I am Joseph. If we have a look at another example, my name is Joseph. I am a teacher. Again, we have a subject, we have a verb, and we have a complement again. I work every day. Again, we have a subject, we have a verb, and then we have the complement every day, which completes that. Well, it's an adjunctive actually, which completes that sentence. These are examples of simple sentences, not simple tenses, simple sentences. If we look at complex language, such as the examples that I'm writing on the board, simply basic means we have two subjects, 1 and 2, we have two verbs, and we also have a conjunction which joins those two clauses together. After I meet up with you, I will go home after dinner. We see it after other verbs such as soon as, which has a very similar meaning to when. So as soon as I get home, I will shower. Of course, here between the two we need to have a comma and a full stop there. Of course, here as soon as is our example of conjunction. I'll give you one more example. When. When I get home, I will do the cleaning. Again, we have that conjunction here. We have the present simple in both of them. Not only in this sentence, but in the sentence below, to get. We also have the second action here, which shows us that once this is completed, this action will result in the future. Again, I will shower. We're not talking about the duration of the action. We're just talking about the action. I will do the cleaning. We're not talking about how long that is going to take us. If it's going to take 2 hours or 3 hours, it's not important. We're simply talking about the action. We're going, hey, get home, do cleaning, quite simply. Some other examples of conjunctions like this. If conjunctions, actually, it may be the first conditional, and in the zero conditional, we have an idea of a single action, but it's present simple, it has a future meaning. Until also follows the same structure. I will wait for you until you get here. Again, it's until present simple, but that has more of a future meaning. It doesn't have really a present meaning. So that's basically why when we talk about single actions here, when we talk about single actions, we can only talk about single actions in the past, and we can only talk about single actions in the future. We can't talk about future actions in the present, unless, of course, with present simple, unless, of course, we have a conjunction. But, of course, with this conjunction, it has a future meaning. It doesn't have a present meaning. So let's go on to the next part. 2. So the first one, just quickly, we have single action. And now we need to somehow include present simple in there somewhere. So we have simple action. We have a single repeated action. Whoops. Repeated action. Something which is repeated. Now I'm going to quickly draw another graph here. Hopefully much quicker than I did before. I've had some practice. Boom. And we're going to divide this into 3 times again. Almost there. So I'm not going to write the past, present, or future because I think you have a good idea. We've got the past, we've got the present, and then we have the future over here. Of course, we need some actions. And I'm going to just really copy the paste the hell out of this. Try and get as many as I can. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 1, and I'm going to quickly put these here in an orderly fashion. Hopefully, by the powers of visualization, you'll be able to understand as though by magic what I'm talking about. You know, generally in the classroom, I'd get students standing up and doing these actions so we have a better visual. I don't often find timelines very useful, but you know, it serves our purpose today. So again, here in this section we have the past, here we have the present, and here we have the future. We're not talking about the duration, we're talking about the action itself, or maybe the state. We'll come back to states later. Let's concern ourselves with actions at the moment. So we've got this repeated action. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Again, we have this repeated action. Sesim geldi mi şimdi? Yani bunun mikrofon bozuk herhalde. Çıkartayım mı? Çok az geliyor. Okay. I'll hold it like this. Hopefully. Is that better? I'm speaking really loudly. Okay, I'm going to get back to the class anyway. Everybody who's having problems listening to me, please turn your computers up as loud as they can go. I seem to be having problems with my microphone this time. Maybe I should just take the microphone out. Anyway, I'm going to get back to the lesson. We don't have much time anyway. Okay, so I'm going to start talking like this. I don't know, it's very girly. Okay, so I'm going to speak like this. So we have this repetition of action. Where were we? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, January, February, March, 1999, 2000, 2001. Here we've got exactly the same. We're not talking about the action. We're just basically saying the single action is a repeated action. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, January, February, March. And here again in the future, January, February, March, next week, the following week, the week after, day 1, day 2, day 3. It really doesn't matter. They are the same idea. And of course, we know when it's the same idea, single, what does single mean? It means simple. I'm going to put that in big letters for you. Simple. Because that's what simple means. It means a single repeated action. It means a single action in the past or in the future, or a single repeated action in the past, present, or future. And we can use it all three. I'm going to quickly click this here because I need 2 hands, but I won't be speaking too much. I'll put it up here like this, just like that. So let me go down to my notes very quickly. So let's have a look at a past simple example. So let's look at a past simple example. And I'm going to make that a little bit smaller for you. We'll put that down to, I don't know, we'll put that down to 18, and we'll get rid of that horrible underline, and we'll get rid of that as well, and we'll just go like that. So a past simple example, repeated action. When I was at university, I walked, well, when I was at university, okay, I read a book every day. There we go, past simple example. Now, with the past simple, you see this expression here, at university, and this one here. I'll highlight those for you actually. And I'll do it just here as well. They are necessary for the past simple to be a repeated action. If we just say, I read a book, or I read a book yesterday, this is no longer a single action. This is no longer a single repeated action. It becomes a single action. It becomes like this up here. I read a book yesterday. It's nothing like this here. So when we use the past simple, because we use the past simple to talk about single actions, to help us understand that the action is repeated, we need to stretch time. When I was at universitydeyken, we need to stretch hergum. We need to emphasize that repetition with structures like these. If we just said, I read every day, I read, then that actually looks like a single action. Doesn't look like a repeated action. So we need to use, continuously, we need to use those structures to show that past simple is a repeated action. If we have a look at a present simple example, I go to work every day. I go to work every day. Now, okay, every day, it's nice to use it. It's nice to use every day in this sentence, but really it's not necessary because the present simple we only use for repeated actions. We don't need to emphasize that. I go to work would be enough, actually. Okay, the sentence sounds incomplete, but in terms of meaning, in terms of logic, it does work without that. We certainly don't need something like this with the present simple because if we go back up here, we don't use it to talk about single actions. We only use it to talk about repeated actions. So these types of phrases are unnecessary. If we go to the future or future simple, I will go to work every day. Next week. You know, and when we look at the future simple, I will go to work every day. Again, we're talking about a repetition of a single action. We're not talking about the duration. We're just saying that this action will happen every day. In the past, this action happened every day. Of course, geçmiş. Of course, past simple is in the past, so we know that it's completed. Then we have, I go to work every day. We know that this action, and we're only interested in the action, is happening every day. Actually, in Turkish, a quick tip. In Turkish, the past simple here, whoops. In Turkish, you don't use, her gün gittim. Bir bakayım. It's not really, it sounds okay to me, but I sometimes think with an English head. I don't think with a Turkish head. So sometimes when I speak Turkish, even if the structure's incorrect, I'm thinking, okay, that sounds fine. But the past simple here we could translate it. The past simple here could be translated, and I think this is interesting, translated as, and where are we? I read a book every day. Let's imagine that this was ne olabilir? I went home, something easier for me. I went home every day. When university finished, when university ended, that would make more sense. When university ended each day, I went home, and we'll get rid of that. So hopefully everybody can hear me. So, when university ended each day, I went home. You see that repeated action there. In Turkish, I really hope this is correct. It could better be translated as giderdim. Giderdim. Çok pis saladım. Really, really just made that up. But that's the way I speak anyway. It sounds correct. Say it's correct. I'm the teacher. Who are you to tell me it's wrong? Giderdim. And this is what I find it interesting, because when we look at the Turkish present simple, gider, yapar, okur, we have that idea. It's just like the English present simple. It's a repeated action. But then when we look at geçmiş zaman, which is what we typically think of being past simple, we don't really use the term geçmiş zaman. We don't use that to talk about repeated actions so much. If we wanted to talk about repeated actions, we could say giderdim, yapardım. So we got that yapar in the present simple, geniş zaman. And to take that repeated idea in Turkish, we just simply put it in the past by changing that prefix. Giderdim, yapardım. Very much like the example we saw earlier. Gidiyordum. We have that suffix there which says, hey, this action happened in the past. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. Not interesting. Not everybody thinks language is as interesting as me, unfortunately. So where am I? A little side note. When we talk about repeated actions in the past, past simple is just one way we can do this. If you're having a conversation with a native speaker or another speaker of English as a second language, and you want to express that idea, to keep it simple, just use simple. But once you become comfortable with using that language, once you become comfortable with past simple being used for repeated ideas, then you can go on and practice some other structures. So I'm going to get back to typing. I can't hold my microphone and type at the same time, unfortunately. I'll get back to typing, and then we'll look at the notes. If you have your notebooks, please take notes. Okay, just give me 1 minute here. So used to has the same meaning. You know, this sentence up here, repeated, I went home at the end of each day. I went home. You know, I went home at the end of each day. We have that repeated action, but we could easily as well say, I used to go home. And that information, when I was at university, that information is no longer necessary. Why? Well, basically used to go, used to here. We only use it for repeated actions. That's it. We only, whoops, take that off. We only use that structure for repeated actions in the past. It has no other use. It has no other meaning. I used to like watching TV. I don't need to say when I was a child, because used to only has one meaning. I used to go, giderdim. It has no other meaning at all. So we only use this for repeated actions, but we can also, sorry, very bad of me, we can also use it for states as well. Such as, I don't know, I used to, I used to like watching TV. You know, here we also have a state. It's not just an action. Now, a slightly more advanced structure we can use. I know a lot of you may be intermediate students. So the following structure, if you don't understand it, it's not necessary. In terms of meaning, it's exactly the same. Past simple for repeated actions, or we can use used to, but we do have another way we can say it, and that would be, I would go home at the end of each day. When I was at uni. We have this structure would. But we don't need to worry about that so far. You know, it's got nothing to do with tenses yet. But I just wanted to show you an alternative to using past simple, using the past simple for a repeated action. We could also use used to for a repeated action or for a repeated state. And we could explain the same idea using the verb would. You don't really need to use it while speaking. You do hear it occasionally. It gives it more of a dramatic effect, a bit of a, I don't know, hey gide hey sort of idea to that sentence. And of course, again, just like with past simple, we generally use these phrases such as when I was at university or whilst I was studying at university. The only thing is though, wow. We can't actually use it to talk about states. So if we look at that sentence up here, where are we? This one here. I used to like watching TV. We can use the past simple. I liked watching TV when I was a child. Of course, we can use this structure. I used to like watching TV when I was a child. That's possible too. But because like, do you remember what type of verb it is? Yeah, that's correct. It's a state verb. We're talking about a state. It's not a verb we can actually observe. So with would, we can't, what's happened here? We can't actually use it to talk about states. So something like, I would like watching TV is actually incorrect. It's not possible. It's not possible to actually say that. Okay, well, it's about 45 minutes past. I think we've covered, I tell you what, let's have 5 more minutes. Damn it. Technically, the lesson is 45 minutes, but I'd like to squeeze this in before next week, because I think it's actually important. I'd like to finish the lesson like this. So we've seen that we use it to talk about we use it to talk about single actions. That's past simple and future simple. We can use simple tenses to talk about repeated actions in the past, in the present, or in the future. Really doesn't matter, not at all. But we can also generally we also there we go. Generally, state verbs are used only, and I'll put only there, only in simple tenses. When we're talking about emotions such as love, like, or concepts like understand, realize, these verbs generally 99% of the time, well, not 99% of the time, but most of the time, these verbs are only used in simple tenses. So if you want to talk about love in the past, it's a state. So we use the past simple. I loved her. If you want to talk about a state in the present, of course, again, we need to use a simple tense. Here, because it's present, we need present simple. I love her. When we talk about that action, that state in the future, again, it's a state. So we use simple tenses. I will love her. Come on, biraz saçma oldu. Ama olsun. The logic is the same. The logic is the same. And I'm going to quickly go here. It's not going to take very quick. I'm going to go to my depot, my props. And I think I have a great example of these verbs in action, actually. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to quickly go back over here. And I'm going to go doop, doop, doop. And I'm going to bir yapıştıracağım. So if we have a look over here, for example, hopefully this is the correct one. I love you. Very arabesque. Very sort of Muslim Baba. I love you. If we try to do this in the continuous tense, I'm loving you, it's not really possible because love is a state verb. State verbs we don't use in continuous tenses. It doesn't matter. Past tense, any past continuous, present continuous, or future continuous. We only use the simple form. So we can't say, I was loving you, for example. Instead of past continuous, we would need to use past simple. I loved you. I've done something wrong here. She hates me. Again, hate. It's a state verb. If we try to use that in any tense, any continuous tense, it's simply going to be wrong. She is hating me. Present continuous, not possible. Again, it really doesn't matter. We could put that in the past. Past continuous, past simple. Hate. I hated her, or I was hating her. Which one's correct? Well, hate, it's a state. Hate is a state. Hate is a state. So we know we need to use simple. If I just quickly do these as well, and then I'll let everybody have a break time, because you have your next lesson starting in 10 minutes. Again, we have some other example of state verbs. Love, hates, owned, need, understood, and belong. And again, in all of these, almost finished. Whoop, almost finished here. I've got very little time left. Nobody's telling me to stop, actually. That's good. I don't like being told to stop. Maybe I can continue. When we look at these, because they're state verbs, again, I want to emphasize, because they are simple, we have to use them. Simple, what does simple mean? Single action, single repeated action, or state. There are exceptions, but we'll look at the exceptions next week. Sometimes a verb, a state verb, can have many different meanings. It doesn't just have one meaning. Some state verbs can have maybe 5 meanings. And in one meaning, we use it as a state, but in the other 4 meanings, we use it as a dynamic verb or an action verb. And we can use ing then. But we'll look at those next week. Thank you very much for today's lesson. I really do apologize for the technical problems, but I'm an idiot. What can I say? I'm not new to tech. I'm new to technology, as it were, especially YouTube channels. As always, everybody, please take care. Enjoy your time this weekend. I think we've got 3 days at home. Well, we've got every day at home, actually, but we've got 3 days where we have to stay in. So make sure that you have all of your supplies. We will continue this lesson next week. So if you've come today or if you've watched today, please feel free to come next week and watch the remainder of the lesson. It will be starting from 2 to 4. Again, we will be continuing tenses. We'll finish off simple tense. I think we've pretty much finished, actually. Let's have a quick look. We have finished, for the best part, simple tenses. We'll look at the formation of simple tenses next week, and then we'll get onto the continuous part, which is a lot easier than the simple part. And then we'll start looking at some practice, the main differences between simple and continuous, and then we'll have some practice together where we go through and answer some questions. So have a nice day. I see you. Actually, my next lesson's on Friday. Come on Friday. It's for upper intermediate students, but an intermediate student will get something from there as well. If not Friday, I see you next week on Wednesday. Have a nice day.